Hey everyone, welcome back to Cali Plants. It's me again, Mark. Today we're back at the greenhouse. Finally, we're able to record a video again here because the people who are doing some work here in the house have already finished their project. So now it's not gonna be noisy anymore, so we can record here at the greenhouse. And if you've already checked the title of this video, then you know that we're gonna be discussing 5 different uses for Instagram that every succulent collector should know. And this is a thing that I've always known, and probably some of you doesn't know these uses yet because probably you're just a beginner, but Instagram has really helped me a lot with my caring for succulents and with identifying succulents. So I wanted to share with you the uses that I take benefit from with Instagram. Now let's just go on to the first one, and that is learning care tips and tricks when it comes to growing succulents. Now, as Instagram is actually a very international type of community, people are not situated in just one location, and there are a lot of growers you'll find are growing in Japan or in Korea or in different parts of the United States. So they have different growing methods, different care tips to share when it comes to growing the succulents. Some of these growers grow them outside, some of them grow succulents indoors, and sometimes you will find these growers that are growing in Asian countries that have different languages, so you wouldn't be understand the captions that they are sharing on their posts, but they have some of the most beautiful succulents out there. So if you follow those, if you can find some grower that is able to share these care tips in English, then you will find that there are a lot of different methods of growing succulents really. And sometimes some other people who are using reels right now to share tricks and tips when it comes to succulents, because Instagram is really pushing this new feature, reels, which is kind of like TikTok, where you scroll videos endlessly so that you spend more time on the app. So in those short videos, some growers, some succulent collectors will also be sharing their watering methods, how they deal with pests, and sometimes how they clean up their succulents. So that is a really nice thing to see in this new feature, Instagram Reels. So if you download Instagram right now and you have that feature, you can check out different tips and tricks when it comes to growing succulent. The second use for Instagram, and I think this is the one that I have used Instagram for the longest time, this is the reason why I open Instagram and check out succulents and check out succulent collectors, is to get inspiration. This is especially true when I was starting out growing succulents like 2 years ago, because a lot of these growers back then were using succulents for different projects, for different arrangements, dish gardens, so they have different ways of doing that, and some different types of growing methods, like growing them on kind of like a wall. So there are a lot of different methods of growing succulents, and you can get really inspired with that. And that was particularly true when it was still, when succulents were still being introduced to the market, when it was just starting out, because a lot of these people, they do that so they have a way to display their succulents. But right now, that is not really practical anymore, because a lot of the collectors right now don't want to grow succulents in dish gardens. But there are still some nice methods, some nice way to decorate with succulents on Instagram and on Reels, and sometimes in these Asian accounts. I recently saw one account that featured these large vases that have cutouts on the sides, and they planted succulents in there, and it looks like a bouquet that is really, really nice, really, really interesting. And it was all the same succulents in just one vase. So I think that's a really nice sight to see, and you might have an idea on how you can decorate with your succulents out there with the help of those videos. Though you might not be able to exactly duplicate what they are doing, at least you have an idea on how to go about it, how to decorate with succulents, especially if you have like already managed to grow your succulents very large and you don't know how to decorate with them. So these Instagram accounts, these reels, sometimes you can get ideas on them on how to decorate with your succulents. The third use for Instagram is to compare varieties. Now, I've always had these questions on my channel: what is the difference of this succulent to this other succulent? Because sometimes they look the same, and some other people will insist to me that these two varieties are just the same even though they are very different. So Instagram will really help you identify the differences of these different varieties, of these different variations of succulents. And I will give you an example, and this is my Echeveria fireball. Okay, I'm using a headset to monitor the sounds. I can't use my other microphone for this type of device. So this is Echeveria fireball, and this is Echeveria arcane. Okay, so you can see. And when you first see this with sellers, you might think that, oh, those are the same plant, those are same agavoides varieties, they look the same, they will not be different. But if you actually look it up on Instagram, you will know that these are very different type of succulents. So I will be posting like a clip of me searching for these plants. And what you can do, if you have a specific variety to search for Instagram, you can use the hashtag feature. So you can search for a certain hashtag like hashtag Echeveria Fireball and hashtag Echeveria Arcane. So you can see what the differences of those plants are. And I find it particularly helpful if I'm buying new varieties, if I want to make sure that one plant is really different from the other. So Instagram really helps me out a lot with that, with comparing different varieties, because as we all know, a lot of these Echeverias are looking the same right now because they're being hybridized over and over, and sometimes they have the same parents and they will have just slight differences. And what I do actually with my collection, if a plant has some slight variations, like if they're not that very different, then I will avoid buying those two. Even though they are different varieties, I will avoid buying them just so that I don't mix them up. And of course, if you're gonna be selling your succulents later on, you don't want your buyers to be confused on what type of succulent you will be selling. So I actually avoid getting similar looking varieties even though they are different. But sometimes the difference will be just right. It will just be sufficient to identify that this plant is different than the other, and that's what the case is with Arcane and with the Fireball. So I wanted to try out these two varieties because I'm a big Echeveria agavoides fan. I really like to try out these new agavoides varieties. Okay, so we have that. The fourth use for Instagram is to see the full growth of your plant, and just like with the last use that I said, comparing varieties, you can also use the hashtag feature to search for the exact variety that you're looking for and see what it will grow like. So I have a specific succulent to show you. This is Echeveria Robin, and you can see that it's still a very small plant. I bought this as a very small plant, and you won't be seeing anything unique with this plant because it looks like this. It looks very ordinary and doesn't have any like nice features. But before I bought this, I actually searched for this plant in Instagram. I searched for its parentage, and this is actually a Lawi hybrid cross with a Vincent Cato, if I'm not mistaken. And this one grows very beautiful. It grows in a clumping fashion, and it produces a lot of side offsets as it grows, and it is a very compact succulent with really nice small leaves. Now, if you're gonna be buying succulents from this Benguet seller, sometimes they will be etiolated, they will not look that good, but sometimes they will be in the right size to be shipped and to be brought in your greenhouse and for you to grow. But sometimes their most distinguishing features will not be highlighted because they are grown in a greenhouse condition in the highlands, so they sometimes are etiolated and they don't have these nice stress colors. So if you manage to look for their stress colors for their mature size on Instagram, then you will have an idea on what the plant will look like once you grow it in your area, especially if you're growing the lowlands where it can be hot, a little bit hot, and where you can see much more color on succulents, because sometimes the heat and the full exposure of the sun actually helps to bring out the nice colors of succulents. And if you're buying from the highlands, that will not be the case. So if you bring them down to your location at the lowlands, you will know what they will look like, how they will develop if you manage to grow them in a stress condition, if you manage to stress them out a little bit. Along with that, you will also get an idea of how big your succulents can grow, because sometimes sellers will grow small size succulents and you have no idea how they can grow or how large they can get. So if you look them up on Instagram, you will get to know that, and also you will get to have an idea on how succulents will develop over time if you look them up on Instagram. Because if a succulent on Instagram is always etiolated, like a lot of growers are growing this succulent and it's always etiolated, it always grows in a stem, then you have an idea that this succulent will not stay compact. So you will also have an idea on how the plant naturally grows, its natural growth habit, because sometimes sellers will grow compact succulents, but if you grow them in your location, they will etiolate, and they will etiolate like most of the time anywhere you put it. So there are varieties that do that, and there are also varieties that stay compact wherever you put it. So you will get an idea on that on Instagram. Like if you have a certain variety that you're looking for, and if you think that that is nice variety on the post of the seller, you can check it out on Instagram And if the plant really looks nice on Instagram, on plenty of posts, the plant really looks nice, then it's probably a well-behaving plant. But if on a lot of posts from a lot of growers, this plant doesn't look good or doesn't match the particular look that you're looking for, then probably it will not be the best plant for you. So you will have an idea on how the plant will develop over time if you look it up on Instagram. The fifth and final use for Instagram is to get updated on the latest varieties that is out there on the market when it comes to succulents, because as we all know, varieties change over time. There are older varieties and then there are new varieties, and sometimes these Korean sellers that import Korean succulents or Chinese succulents from overseas and bring them to the Philippines, sometimes they will be growing these really old varieties that will be too old, that will eventually become a liability in your collection because it's an old succulent and nobody wants it anymore. So how will you identify if a succulent is new compared to if it's an old variety? So Instagram can really help you with that, especially if you follow these like large succulent growers which are always updated when it comes to the latest varieties. There are different seller accounts on Instagram that you can follow even if you don't live wherever they are selling their succulents, but at least you can get an idea of what is new when it comes to the succulent market. Because that's what I do. I follow these really succulent growers, succulent hybridizers, so I can get an idea of what is the latest when it comes to hybrids and varieties that are currently in the market. So Instagram can really help you with that. Now, when it comes to these new varieties, sometimes they will not be able to be available right away here in the Philippines because they are grown or they are hybridized in other countries, and sometimes they will not be mass produced yet because they're very new. So you don't expect that if you find a succulent on Instagram that you will be able to buy it right away here in the Philippines. So sometimes there is a wait period, but eventually all of these succulents will eventually be available here in the Philippines as well, I believe, because that's just how succulents are. People are always looking for the latest varieties to grow, the latest type of plants to try out with more colors, with much more unique features. So really, if you follow these Instagram accounts which have these latest varieties, you will know when a succulent is new or when it is already old. So you will have an idea on these different type of varieties. And I find it particularly helpful when it comes to the sellers of succulents that will be buying or that will be importing new plants to propagate and to sell later on, so that they can get ahead of the market, so they will know what is already new and what is already old. And Instagram can help out a lot with that, especially, oh no, I don't mean especially, I mean alongside identifying succulents. So sometimes sellers will not be able to identify succulents as well, and sometimes Google will not be really helpful with that, because sometimes Google will be vague when it comes to showing image results of some type of succulents, because some succulents will look different, okay, than what you expect them to be, because sometimes a seller will be showing you the name, and Google will not be very helpful when it comes to verifying the type of succulent that has that name. So sometimes a name will have different search results in Google. So if you look it up on Instagram, you will have a much more specific identification of a succulent. You will know more if the name is correct with that type of plant. And that is very helpful when it comes to succulent sellers to identifying their plants. Because if a succulent seller knows the much more specific name of the plant, then he will have an advantage compared to other sellers which doesn't have names, because sometimes the price of the plant is really on the name. Okay, if it's an old name, then people won't be buying that, won't be paying too much for that. But if you already find a new succulent that has a much more newer name, then people will be much more enticed to buy that new variety because it's something that they have never heard of. And sometimes Chinese sellers and Korean sellers will also not be placing the exact right name on their plants. So looking it up on Instagram will help you identify the correct and proper name. And you will just have to know how to use the Instagram features. You can follow succulent collectors and you can use the hashtag feature. And if you really use a hashtag feature and you find these really nice looking succulents, you can check out the accounts that post these really nice looking succulents, and you can follow them. And you can always be updated on their latest succulents, and you can have an idea on how beautiful succulents can grow if they are grown properly. So you can follow these really nice succulent collectors on Instagram. If that's what you want to see in your feed, And if that's the way that you're gonna be using Instagram for checking on succulents, I would highly recommend you follow a lot of these older grower or seller accounts from overseas. Now also, you can follow me on Instagram, Cali Plants. I have an Instagram account, though I still don't have a lot of followers yet, but you can follow me. I will post consistently on that, on my Instagram account, on my latest succulents, and I will try to post the most beautiful succulents that I have in my collection on my Instagram account. And sometimes I will be posting succulents there that I can't feature on my videos, so I will post them on Instagram instead. So you can follow me up there, and you can also follow me on my Facebook page, Cali Plants. And if you really like the tips, the uses of Instagram that I shared with you in this video, please make sure to hit the thumbs up. Comment down below any question that you want us to discuss when it comes to your succulents on our future videos. If you want a topic to be discussed, then just comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. And then I think that's about it for this video, guys. I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.